Hi, we're live with Talk to Us Tuesday. If you joined us a few minutes ago, we had some technical difficulties, but we're back and hopefully you can hear us. We're here with our Public Works crew. We're here at the Fleet Maintenance Shop, and I am your host, Kristen Chernosky. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be answering your questions on all things streets related. So I'm here with Michael Woodruff, Christopher Montoya, and Bob Younger. If you guys will introduce yourselves to our audience. Mike?
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Woodruff. I'm the Director of Public Works. Oversee Public Works Department, which includes engineering services, construction management, fleet services, and street operations.
Christopher Montoya, I'm the Public Works Engineer.
Good afternoon, Bob Younger, I'm Street Supervisor.
Great. Again, if you have questions about our streets, snow removal, this is your time to ask your questions. We'll be live for 30 minutes, and if we miss you, please feel free to leave your question and we'll get back to you. So the first question I want to ask are, what are some of the projects the Public Works Department is currently working on? Who would like to take this one?
Currently, our active construction projects are our 2018 Street Preservation Program. It's an annual maintenance project that restores and preserves the condition of our roadways. It includes things like patching, striping, seal coats like chip seal and slurry seal. We did do a new experiment this year with hot chip, and also includes mill and overlaying. We also have our I76 and Bromley Lane roundabout project, which will be starting March 1st, 2019 approximately. Our engineering projects consist of our Vision Zero project. It's a school zone and safety for traveling public and pedestrians. We also have our bridge inspection program. We did our pavement inspection for surface condition program this year. We also have some design projects for bike lanes and sidewalks.
Great. So 2019 is right around the corner. What do you guys have planned for next year that our residents will see?
We're going to start with a lot of asset management and beginning a lot of our construction documents for bidding. We'll roll out our 2019 street preservation program. We'll have maps online you could look up. We'll also be implementing about 10 miles of bike lanes within that project as well. We'll be implementing our Vision Zero recommendations. We'll begin planning for any recommendations from our bridge inspections. And we'll also be looking at our assets and inventory that we currently have. Excuse the train as it drives by.
We are live outside, so there's a nice train going by. We'll just give it a second to pass so you guys can hear us. All right, let's try this again. Again, we are live, so for the next 30 minutes, if you have questions for our streets crew, please feel free to leave them, and we'll try and get to as many questions as we can, and hopefully that's the only train that passes by. So speaking of streets, one of the questions we get a lot is, when are you going to pave this street, or what's the process for paving streets?
We typically go through a process where every 2 to 4 years we inspect our roadway network. Based on the criteria of the condition of the roadway, it establishes particular maintenance criteria. We evaluate the entire network, and then we begin making iterations to decisions on which roads that will need to be maintained. This may seem contradictory. Roads that are completely falling apart, we do have a tendency to defer due to the significant costs. And then roads that are in really good condition or moderate condition, we tend to employ preservation techniques to preserve the condition of those roadways, and we find that we get the best return on our investment by making that approach.
You mentioned the hot seal. What is that?
So this year we did a hot chip. It's basically hot in place chip seal that's applied. It's similar to like overlays where it's hot mix asphalt. However, it differs from our chip seals, which are usually cold applied. We did that section this year on Bromley Lane from about Chambers to 27th Avenue. It turned out to be a really smooth ride. We're waiting for some structural testing to see kind of what the value of the structure was that we obtained by utilizing that material.
Okay. We have our first question. This is from Blaine, and Blaine would like to know, with all the growth in Prairie Center, especially the residential growth at Eagle and Buckley, Are there plans to expand Buckley 27th between Bromley and 136? Thoughts on that?
A lot of our guidelines are basically through our master transportation plan. It was adopted by City Council in 2016. This was a public process. Developers were included. And if you go to those maps, it'll kind of show the cross sections of each roadway and the plans for those roadways. Both of those roadways are intended for future improvements. It is a little bit of challenging where the older section ties into the newer section more because of right-of-way and land acquisition. Yet those plans do show different transitions. These are long-term plans.
Gotcha. Again, if you have questions, I think the train's almost done. If you have questions, we'll be live for the next about 20-ish minutes. So feel free to leave them and we'll try and get all the questions you might have for our streets crew. So Michael, you mentioned, or Christopher, you mentioned the Vision Zero. This was launched earlier this year. Can you all tell us about this initiative?
I'll leave this one to Mike. He's
Sure.
an expert with this project.
Like you mentioned, Kristen, the program initiated back basically towards the beginning of the year this year. It's a program in which we hired a consultant to come in, a nationally known consultant that has come in and basically evaluated our entire system in regards to vehicle, pedestrian, and bike safety. We also incorporated the school zone program into that, where we looked at safe school zones. We've worked with the consultant to identify a variety of different areas throughout town that we consider are what are high injury zones from an accident standpoint, both from a pedestrian, a bicycle, and a vehicle standpoint. We are currently going through recommendations that have been made through that program and implementing those recommendations throughout the school zones. Our next step will then be to look at the high injury networks, look at any improvements or modifications that can be made to our traffic system to minimize potential conflicts in the future. But that program's going along very well. And like I said, focusing on the school zones initially, getting signs up, looking at crosswalks, looking at stop areas, pedestrian traffic as well as vehicular and bicycle traffic in the school zones, and going through and implementing all those recommendations. I'd say right now we're probably about 70 to 75% done in those school zone areas. We tackled the top ones first as far as priority and safety issues, and then we're moving into the other areas now. And then, like I said, we're actually coming up on a TAC meeting this week with the Technical Advisory Committee. We'll be reviewing the draft implementation plan that our consultants put together for us, and then taking a look at making transitions into 2019 and taking action on those further developments in that plan.
Great, thank you. We have a few more questions that have come in. Debbie would like to know, she says, my neighbor and I do not have drainage in front of our houses on South Main, the west side. Can we get that corrected? Can you talk a little bit about the drainage and what someone would need to do?
It's kind of a tough question. We need a lot more information. I'd suggest that they reach out to our Public Works Department, and then we'd have to look at that situation specifically to understand a little more of what's going on.
So Debbie, if you could reach out to our Public Works Department, they can look at your area and give you some more information. And then we have another question from John. John says, I've heard about improvements on Main and Bridge on the south end. What are the plans there?
There's a variety of different items going. We have targeted Main Street from Bromley to Bridge for our next year 2018 street preservation project. We're actually out there doing restoration work today. We'll be finishing. It'll be incorporating bike lanes and changing the current configuration. There is I believe a plaza that's going to be also built, and that will be right off of Bridge Street, just west of Main, or east of Main, and west of 4th Avenue. So the building will be demolished, and I'm not certain of any other improvements at this time in that area.
Okay. You just mentioned bike lanes, and you all recently implemented some bike lanes. Can you talk about that?
So typically anytime we do road improvements, we'll usually have to restripe. One of the things we do is look to see if we can reconfigure existing lanes. So that occurred on 4th Avenue. We widened the bike lanes to 6 feet instead of 4 feet. We also did Jessup Street, Southern, and a few other locations. We piloted North 11th Avenue this year. We'll be modifying it by making it more permanent. It was temporary striping and such. We'll also be integrating into next year's capital program, our annual maintenance program, 5 to 10 more additional miles. We'll have maps online. I think that's probably the best place to find those resources. Those maps will be coming soon, showing all our different bike networks.
Great, thank you. So snow season has begun. So we had our first snowfall on Sunday. So Bob, tell us about the city's snow removal process. When do you plow streets? Who gets priority?
Thank you, Kristen. It's complex a little bit in some ways. I mean, when do we plow streets? Generally, when I start watching weather forecasts, about 3-4 weeks ago, closer than I normally do. The system that came through on Sunday, I was watching that already on a Wednesday. So we try and keep an eye on the forecast. I've got other avenues of weather information that I receive in the office. We'll prepare our trucks, our crews, prior to the snowstorm actually coming in. Then it's kind of, we like to be out there when it first hits. This year we are in a great position as far as in back of us we have one of our new trucks. We have new equipment this year that we've been learning how to use. Technology is great on them, but this year we can actually go out and pre-wet. That's something in the past that we could do with one truck, but now we have that capability in 6 of them, so we can actually get a little bit ahead of the storm depending on the storm. Mm-hmm. And as we say that, this storm we had Sunday, I did no pre-wetting in town at all. And the reasoning behind that is, as you can see, the temperatures today are great. And so if you go into too warm of a post-storm, you have a different effect. So I watch that kind of stuff, trying to use the right applications for the right storms, both to be more efficient, save money, that kind of thing. The network, we've probably got close to 400 miles in our plowing network that we work on. We have them broke up into 3 divisions: a primary system, a secondary system, and then what we call neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. The primaries are going to be your primary streets in town, the Bridge Street, Bromley, some of the Prairie Center loops. Secondaries are going to be the collectors that come into those. The neighborhoods, what we strive to do, we don't always get it done, but what we strive to do is go through the neighborhoods with routes so that any citizen doesn't have to go hopefully more than a couple blocks to get to a plowed street. So as far as when we plow, we're out there about every snowstorm. Mm-hmm. The depth, post temperatures, pre-temperatures, all that stuff play into effect on how we work it during the storm. But we've got 2 shifts we run. We'll split the crews. We'll have a day shift running, a night shift running. So we are out there 24/7 through the duration of the storms till our primary, secondaries, neighborhoods are all passable. Sometimes that gets interesting on defining passable, but we're out there plowing, pre-wetting, sanding through the duration of the storm.
So talk about this truck behind us. How has technology changed? What's different when you all are plowing versus a few years ago or 10, 15 years ago?
Technology. These trucks are outfitted with computer systems. These systems, through the data, will send me data into my office, will tell us how much materials we're putting down, where we're putting them down. It can go into depth of where the plows are up, where the plows are down. It's incorporated in a GPS system that also I monitor in the office during the storms. It gives us a better reading on what we're actually doing out there. Right. In the past, the old equipment, we had some dials, and the dials, you were 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9. These trucks, you can actually dial in what you want to put. You can set the computer to put 150 pounds of ice slicer down per lane mile. So I feel the price of the materials that we use, being able to dial this in closer, we're not wasting any material now.
Yeah.
We're getting it down. We're efficient with what we're doing, but yet we're not wasting any. And in the long run, ends up saving us money.
Great. And if you're interested in learning more, feel free to go to the city's YouTube page. We have a nice video with you featured that talks all about our snow removal process. Again, we're live with our streets crew. If you have questions, feel free to leave them and we'll try and get to as many as we can. If we miss you, we'll still answer your question, so feel free to leave it. So I have a question here from Janie. Janie says, we have a completely unfinished street that has been unfinished for years. As Brighton East Farms grows bigger and bigger, we really need the other half of the street finished. It was on your agenda and then removed. Any plans to put it back on? This is 45th Avenue and Bridge. Any information that we could provide on that?
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. Right now, actually, that roadway is planned to be finished. Design should be finished on that second half of that roadway this year, with construction taking place during 2019. I believe the requirements are that the roadway needs to be completed by the beginning of 2020.
Okay.
So we should see some activity in that in the coming year and finish the section of that roadway off.
So
Just
good.
a little more about it. We actually kind of engage in what you'd call a public-private partnership to some extent with the developer, well-known developer in the city. And we originally were going to take on the task as the city alone. Through this partnership, it's kind of a win-win situation for everyone, where now we can have the developer help contribute.
Great.
And they're taking a lead role.
Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Janie and Amanda. We often get questions about potholes and how you guys fill potholes, how residents can report that. Can you guys talk about that?
Sure. The easiest way, I guess, to report a pothole is go into the brightonco.gov internet system. I think there's a link down at the bottom. I know how to get in there. I just don't fill them out a lot. And I believe that's the best way to get in there. That sends a work order request straight into my office. Then I can deploy guys, out to take care of those. We try to get to them as quick as possible. I mean, I'd like to say, within 24, 48 hours of me knowing about them. Hopefully we're kind of, I think we run in that average, pretty close. There's different ways to patch a pothole. There's different times of year we do use different materials. My preferable way would be to hot mix, which means you cut the hole out, you go to Denver. We don't have any locally here. But we go to Denver, we pick up hot mix, bring it back and put it in that way. Now, with that being said, I have to have enough potholes generated to justify running a truck to Denver, to pick up materials, and your temperatures have to be, adequate for that kind of stuff. On a temporary, more in the winter time, fix, we use cold mix.
Okay.
It's another material made specially for that.
Gotcha. Another question we often get is about crosswalks. How does the city evaluate if a crosswalk should be implemented at a certain location?
So typically you would go through and collect data. If you hear a lot of what we talk about, it's gathering data so that we're making sound data-driven decisions. Typically pedestrians are going to warrant some type of crosswalk. I will say that we do not encourage uncontrolled crosswalks. We do get a lot of requests for specific crosswalks at locations such as Bridge Street. It's a safety problem when we do that, so we look for controlled locations. These are traffic signals and all-way stops, or on one leg of the two-way stops. Generally speaking, you're going to see a crosswalk accommodated with those features. I think if you have specific areas of concern, you can always reach out to us and we'll look at them. We're evaluating a certain location as of right now. Our Vision Zero program is also going to lean into, are these crossings in most ideal locations, and how do we basically keep pedestrians safe? That's kind of the first priority there.
And that's one thing I would follow up on too. As Christopher mentioned, the Vision Zero program has been very useful in helping to determine locations as far as crosswalks and where we need those, or are the ones that we have in place currently acceptable.
Great. And I guess to segue into street signs and traffic signals, can you talk about that? How you guys determine if a traffic signal is needed or a stop sign?
Typically, it's a data thing. There's more code and manuals on how that process looks. It does always start with collecting data. It may seem weird. We usually start at a two-way stop. It goes to a four-way stop. Traffic conditions will get worse, and then you'll typically go into a traffic signal if warranted by the traffic volumes. You'll usually see a traffic signal at like a collector street and an arterial street, or two collectors. You're typically never going to see one in a residential neighborhood, within the neighborhood. You will see more of like two-way stops and four-way stops. New development, new traffic patterns all can relate. And we want to hear from anybody if they have concerns about any intersections. Sometimes they get missed on our radar. We don't see the number of cars going through there. We actually have traffic counters. We go out there and we set them down and collect the data. We check speeds, and we also check the volumes.
Great. We get questions from time to time about I76 and Bridge Street, and if there's going to be an interchange there. What's the plan for that?
I think as our long-term plan goes forward, there is a plan to eventually have an interchange at 76 and Bridge. It is currently in our capital plan. It's still a few years out from there. But obviously the city is currently looking and exploring possible funding options for that, grant opportunities and so forth. But we are looking in the long term, and it is in our transportation plan to eventually put an interchange there. It'd be speculation right at the moment to pin down an exact year as to when that'll go in, but I can assure the residents that we are looking at that in our forward motion as far as our transportation plan is concerned.
Great. We are live with our streets crew. We have a few more minutes left, so if you have a question you're dying to ask, go ahead and leave it now. We'll try and get you your question answered. Otherwise, just leave your question. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. So talk to me a little bit about sidewalks. Whose responsibility is it to replace the sidewalk if it's damaged? Does the city do that, or is it the homeowner?
Yeah. Kristen thinks that's a great question, and we get that from time to time. We have people call in and they've got a broken sidewalk, or they've got some curb and gutter that's broken. And actually, the way the city code reads, it is the resident's responsibility to replace the existing curb, gutter, and sidewalk in front of their property. So in other words, if you have a sidewalk that's damaged, if you have curb and gutter that's damaged, it is the homeowner's responsibility to do that. Now, we are looking at a program in the future to assist in the cost with residents on that, but right now it is the responsibility of the resident to replace that damaged curb, gutter, or sidewalk. Some people think it's just a sidewalk. The code actually references both curb, gutter, and sidewalk.
Great. One last question I want to get in before we close. We hear from residents often that on a certain street the speed limit is too low or it's too high. How are speed limits determined? And if someone is concerned about an area, what should they do?
Again, we always ask that you reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We act for representatives of the citizens, and we can't be everywhere all the time. Again, it's another data decision. We really can't arbitrarily set a speed limit. So in other words, we feel it's 40, we don't put it 40. What we actually do is we put down our traffic counters, we collect the traffic data, and basically from the data that's collected, speeds, it'll set the 85th percentile speed. There's a little bit of leeway. Typically we're going to be within that proximity of that 85th percentile. You will see other things such as school zones where there's criteria as well, and you'll see reductions of speed in those areas. We recently just raised the speed limit on Southern to 40 miles per hour, and the 85th percentile was just over 40, so our sound judgment was to put it at 40 miles an hour.
Great. Well, before we close, anything that you want to tell our residents that we didn't go over? Any last thoughts or comments?
Well, Kristen, one thing I'd like to express to the residents is, the Public Works Department is here to help you with any public works related issues that you have. Christopher was exactly right. Please let us know. We're not out there in every sector of the community at all times, so things come up. If you have something individual or on your block, or you notice something just driving through town, please give us a call. You can rest assured that the dedicated staff in Public Works will take a look at that immediately. Get back to you with a response as to what we can do to help mitigate the concern that you may have, address the issues that you may have, and take care of those problems that are out there. But please give us a call or email us at any time. We're here to help you just as much as you're there to help us.
I encourage everybody to get online, check out all our maps, our different information, videos. We're working on a new video series that'll show different processes we're implementing. and a slew of information there available to you.
I would encourage the citizens be prepared for winter. You know, this is a good time of year to make sure your vehicles are adequately equipped, you know, for winter driving. I encourage the citizens to shovel as much of their sidewalks and stuff onto their lawns. It just helps add their water and it keeps it off our streets. And just, you know, be careful, be safe. Drive according to the conditions out there. You know, watch these plows, they're big. You know, they're hard to see around at some points, you know, so we want everybody safe out there.
Great. Thank you. Lots of really good information. If you weren't able to join us live, feel free to leave a question and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. As always, you could reach out to the Public Works Department for any questions or concerns that you have. And thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next month. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.